Hard work kills ambition. Machiavelli's controversial truth. We live in a culture that worships hard work like a religion. Grind culture, hustle mindset, no days off. We're told that the more hours we bleed into our tasks, the more valuable we become. That success is the reward of labor. That greatness belongs to those who sacrifice comfort on the altar of productivity. But what if this entire belief system is a lie? What if the thing we call hard work isn't the highway to ambition, but the very noose that strangles it? What if, by idolizing labor, we've misunderstood what it truly means to become powerful? Machiavelli believes something deeply unsettling, that hard work, when unexamined, can be a trap. Not because work itself is wrong, but because effort without cunning, without vision, without strategic calculation leads to servitude, not sovereignty. Let's start with the unspoken assumption. We believe ambition and hard work go hand in hand, but if you look closely, many of the most powerful people in history weren't the ones working the hardest. They were the ones orchestrating the hard work of others. Machiavelli's genius was his unapologetic honesty about this. In The Prince, he doesn't glorify tireless labor, he glorifies results, manipulation, precision, timing, ruthless awareness. In other words, he understood that ambition is not about how much effort you expend, but how deliberately and intelligently you direct your energy. That's why he was hated by moralists and adored by realists.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Let me ask you something confronting. Is your obsession with hard work just a socially approved form of fear? Fear of being called lazy, fear of being judged, fear of slowing down and realizing you're climbing the wrong mountain. Because here's the painful irony. The more you chase busyness for its own sake, the more you dilute your ambition into noise. You get so caught in the treadmill that you forget why you stepped on it in the first place. And this isn't just a modern problem, this is human nature. Machiavelli saw it clearly. He saw how most people prefer routine and obedience, even if it costs them their dreams, because it's safer to be exhausted than exposed. We romanticize the idea of the peasant who works from dawn till dusk, but Machiavelli asked a darker question. What if that peasant was never meant to toil? What if he had a mind sharp enough to rule but was broken by a system that told him hard work was his virtue? Think of your own life. Are you doing the work of a peasant while possessing the mind of a ruler? Are you exhausting yourself with relentless motion while your deeper ambitions, your dangerous, glorious ambitions, lie buried under to-do lists and social approval? Ambition is not about speed, it's about leverage, the clever use of time, the manipulation of energy, the refusal to play the same game as everyone else. Hard work, when aimed with precision, can be noble, but blind hard work, that's slavery in disguise. And here's where Machiavelli shocks us. He suggests that to rise, we must be willing to appear hard-working while secretly conserving our energy for the decisive moments, that moment when a single action, properly timed, does more than years of sweat. Is that dishonest, or is that the wisdom of someone who refuses to burn out before reaching the throne? Ask yourself, if your goal was not to look good but to win, would you still be doing what you're doing right now? If you were building an empire, not a resume, would your daily effort look the same? These are not comfortable questions. But ambition is never born in comfort. It's born in those dangerous inner monologues we have late at night, when the mask slips and the real hunger speaks. The one that says, "I want more, but I don't want to die chasing it." Machiavelli teaches us that power is not earned by merit alone. It is taken by those who are willing to play the game differently. And to do that, you must stop confusing movement with meaning. You must stop equating effort with effectiveness. You must dare to slow down, not to rest, but to observe. Because the person who watches longer, thinks deeper, and acts smarter will always outperform the person who just works harder. So here's the truth you were never supposed to hear. Hard work can kill your ambition, not because ambition is weak, but because it is sacred, and sacred things cannot be prostituted to endless toil. Ambition needs clarity, strategy, silence, and yes, rest. Because only when you step back from the madness of motion can you see the map of power clearly. Only then can you strike, not with exhaustion, but with precision. Slaves to the grind, why we mistake pain for progress. Somewhere along the way, we made pain a virtue, not real pain, the kind that refines you, strips you down to your essence, reshapes you, but performative pain, the pain of the grind, the exhaustion we show off like war medals, the all-nighters, the schedule so full there's no room left for thought. We worship this version of suffering as if it's proof of character, as if misery must mean you're getting closer to greatness. But Machiavelli would look at this cult of burnout and raise a skeptical eyebrow, because he knew that pain, detached from strategy, is just vanity in disguise. You see, there's a kind of person who thinks that the more they suffer, the more they deserve success. They don't measure growth in results, they measure it in tiredness. But suffering doesn't make you wise, it doesn't make you noble. Sometimes it just makes you tired, and too tired to see the truth. And here is that truth. The grind, for most people, is a distraction, a self-imposed fog. It gives the illusion of movement while preventing real transformation, because transformation requires something the grind does not allow: space. Space to think, to reflect, to plan. Space to act, not from urgency, but from awareness. Machiavelli saw this in rulers who worked themselves into irrelevance, princes who reacted to every threat with panic, leaders who confused action with control. He advised them instead to be patient, to be cold if necessary. He understood that domination comes not from motion but from mastery, and mastery, by its very nature, resists haste. So when you fill your life with busyness, when you treat your calendar like a badge of honor, you're not proving your worth, you're proving your fear. Fear that stillness might force you to confront how little of your effort is actually moving you toward your real ambitions. Ask yourself a dangerous question. Why are you working so hard? Is it because your dream demands it, or because you're afraid of what you'll feel if you stop? The grind is seductive because it gives you something to do. It drowns out the deeper questions. It says, you don't need to think, you just need to push. But ambition without thought is just momentum. And momentum in the wrong direction is a trap. You can spend your entire life sprinting on a treadmill and die never having moved an inch closer to the life you actually wanted. Let's get even more honest. Some of us use hard work to avoid responsibility. not the responsibility to others, but to ourselves. If we admit that strategy matters more than effort, then we also have to admit that we've been choosing the easy path all along. Yes, you heard that right. The grind, the so-called hard path, is often the coward's path, because it's easier to exhaust yourself than to face the terror of a blank page, of silence, of staring into the void and asking, what do I really want to build? And what's the most effective way to get there? Those questions burn. They make you vulnerable. So instead, you go back to the grind. Because pain is predictable. Progress, real progress, is not. Machiavelli teaches us that power belongs to those who refuse to suffer needlessly, who understand that the greatest energy is preserved for the moment it truly counts. He writes about how fortune favors the prepared, but not the perpetually exhausted. The ruler who is always fighting fires never gets to shape the future. The ambitious person who is always busy never gets to build something lasting. And so we must unlearn the pride we've attached to pain, because not all suffering is sacred. Some of it is self-inflicted. Some of it is performative. Some of it is just distraction dressed up as discipline. Here's the irony no one wants to face. Sometimes the most ambitious thing you can do is to stop, to walk away from the tasks that don't serve you, to disappoint people who expect you to keep grinding, to sit in a room with no noise, no urgency, and ask yourself, what am I really trying to become? That's where ambition is born, not in the sweat, but in the silence, in the refusal to waste your life proving your worth through exhaustion. So if your days are full but your dreams feel far, maybe it's time to question the grind. Not because you're weak, but because you're finally strong enough to stop mistaking pain for progress. And if you have the courage to step off the wheel, to turn your effort into intention, then you will no longer be a slave to the grind, you will become its master. Ambition is not a marathon, it's a war of positioning. We've all been fed the same myth that ambition is a marathon, a long, grueling test of endurance. That if you just keep running, keep pushing, keep grinding, you'll eventually arrive. Success, they say, is a matter of time and persistence. And so millions of us sprint in circles, sweating through the same loops, hoping that the universe will eventually reward our suffering. But Machiavelli would laugh at such naivete, because ambition, in his world, was never about endurance. It was about positioning, about where you stand when opportunity knocks, about how silently, patiently, and shrewdly you place yourself so that one precise move does what 10,000 hours of grinding never could. You see, we've confused ambition with stamina. We admire those who never give up, who run themselves into the ground for years without pause. But endurance without direction is a waste. It's a myth we tell ourselves to feel better about not thinking. It soothes the ego, makes us feel like we're heroes just for showing up. But Machiavelli knew better. He knew that power didn't go to the loudest, the busiest, or the most tired. It went to the one who understood the game. And the game isn't about who runs longest. It's about who waits in the right place at the right time and strikes with precision. Ask yourself, what's your position right now? Not your job title, not your income, but your strategic position. Are you where you need to be when the door opens? Are you in proximity to the decision makers, the leverage points, the real sources of influence? Or are you off somewhere, sweating through tasks that nobody will remember, hoping hard work alone will lift you up? Because here's the brutal truth. If you're in the wrong position, effort is irrelevant. You could be working harder than everyone else, but if you're not aligned with power, your labor is invisible. This is why Machiavelli emphasized the virtue of cunning. He didn't care for moral grandstanding, he cared about results. He taught that ambition is tactical. It's about knowing where to invest your limited energy, because energy is not infinite. And those who waste it trying to look productive, trying to earn admiration through fatigue, end up spent, bitter, and irrelevant. But those who conserve their energy for when it matters, those who move with intent, build legacies. Think about chess. The queen isn't powerful because she moves the most often. She's powerful because of where she's placed. Every piece has potential, but only when it's in the right position. The same is true of us. You don't need to be the smartest, the strongest, or the most charismatic. You just need to be positioned better than everyone else. And the tragedy is, most people never even stop to consider where they are. They only think about how much they're doing. We admire the stories of people who worked for decades and finally made it. But look closer. Often the real turning point wasn't the work itself. It was a moment, a conversation, a relationship, a sudden realization. That moment only mattered because they were ready for it, positioned correctly. 1,000 others had the same moment and missed it because they were grinding so hard they didn't even notice the door had opened. So let me ask you something radical. What if you stopped running? What if instead of trying to outwork everyone, you decided to outthink them? What if you pulled back, zoomed out and mapped the entire field? Where are the pressure points? Where are the alliances? Where is the hidden leverage? Because once you see the map, you stop moving aimlessly. You begin to move like a strategist, not a laborer. And this shift isn't just philosophical, it's transformational. When you start viewing ambition as a war of positioning, every yes becomes a tactic, every no becomes a boundary. You stop saying yes to everything that looks productive and start saying yes only to what aligns with the mission. You begin to realize that most of what you've been doing is just a way to feel busy, and that feeling busy is not the same as building an empire. Ambition that lasts, the kind that rewrites history, is cold, not heartless but precise. It doesn't chase, it waits, and when the moment comes, it moves with force. That's the lesson Machiavelli offers. Play the long game, not the loud one. Be feared not for how much you do, but for how little you need to do to get what you want. Because when you understand positioning, a whisper becomes more powerful than a scream. The power of strategic laziness, why doing less makes you invincible. There's a certain kind of laziness that isn't weakness, it's wisdom. A deliberate kind of stillness, not born from apathy, but from clarity. It's the laziness of the lion, not the cow. The lion doesn't chase every movement in the grass. It waits, it conserves, it stalks. It knows that energy is currency, and waste is fatal. This is what Machiavelli quietly respected, even if he never called it by name. The art of doing less, strategically. The understanding that power is not accumulated through exhaustion, but through discipline of attention, of action, of presence. In a world hypnotized by busyness, strategic laziness becomes a weapon. We've been conditioned to associate value with output. More hours worked, more items checked off, more meetings attended. But most of this activity is noise. It keeps people tired and distracted. It keeps the ambitious man stuck in the machine he was meant to rise above. Machiavelli, ever the realist, understood that not every move is worth making. Sometimes inaction is the most calculated form of domination, because the person who doesn't flinch, doesn't rush, doesn't react, holds the highest ground. And when the dust settles, it's not the most active who wins, it's the one who acted only when it mattered. Let me ask you something few dare to answer honestly. How much of your daily work actually brings you closer to your highest aim? Strip away the illusions, the guilt, the external expectations, just focus on the raw math of it. The truth for most of us is devastating, maybe 10%, maybe less. The rest is filler, performance, compliance, noise. But what if you designed your life like a master strategist? What if your schedule wasn't built around what others expected, but around moments of leverage? What if you could eliminate 80% of your effort and still achieve more than the rest? Because every action you took was a blade, not a blunt instrument. That's the secret most successful people never admit publicly. Their power comes not from doing more, but from saying no more often, from refusing to dilute their energy across 100 shallow tasks, from understanding that clarity beats hustle. You see it in great generals, in legendary entrepreneurs, in transformative artists. They all practice some form of strategic laziness. Not because they're lazy in spirit, but because they've realized that life is short, and you don't win by touching everything, you win by touching the right things with devastating precision. Strategic laziness isn't about avoiding difficulty, it's about refusing meaningless difficulty. It's not passive, it's selective. It requires the strength to delay action until the field is yours. And that takes more control than simply working hard, because hard work feels safe, busy feels noble. But restraint? That demands presence, vision, patience. It demands that you endure the anxiety of not reacting and instead let the moment mature into opportunity. This is how the invincible move. Quietly, rarely, with intent so sharp it cuts through the chaos. You don't remember the people who worked the hardest. You remember the ones who changed the game. And they didn't do that by drowning in effort. They did it by knowing exactly when to move and when to disappear. So ask yourself, what would your life look like if you honored your energy as sacred? If you stopped glorifying the grind and started treating time like a weapon, would you still be chasing what you're chasing? Would you still be proving what you're trying to prove? Or would you finally become dangerous, not because of how much you do, but because of how little you need to do to leave your mark? In the end, Machiavelli's controversial truth was never about killing effort, it was about killing wasted effort. He wasn't against ambition, he was against stupidity masquerading as virtue. And when you learn to be strategically lazy, you stop being a pawn. You become the player who moves last and wins. Effortless power, how doing less makes you unstoppable. The brilliance of strategic laziness is that it frees you from the trap that consumes most people, the belief that constant action equals progress. But what Machiavelli saw, and what most people refuse to admit, is that motion without direction is just theatre. We applaud people who stay busy. We reward those who burn out. But rarely do we stop to ask, were they even moving in the right direction? Strategic laziness isn't about doing nothing, it's about refusing to do the wrong things. It's the discipline to stop performing effort and start engineering impact. Look around. The world is full of tired people going nowhere. They wear exhaustion like a badge. They confuse stress with significance. But the person who thinks before acting, who chooses 3 moves with care rather than 30 out of panic, that person is untouchable. Machiavelli knew that to win, you don't have to act constantly, you just have to act decisively. And that means clearing away the clutter, clearing your calendar, your mind, your life of anything that doesn't directly serve your core ambition. But here's the paradox. To do less, you must know exactly what you want. That's the part most people never confront. They grind because it keeps them from having to ask the hard questions. Who am I? What do I want? What am I really building? The grind becomes an escape from vision. Strategic laziness, on the other hand, demands vision. It demands that you know your next move before anyone else even sees the board, and once you do, the need for endless work evaporates because you're no longer reacting, you're orchestrating. Think of it like this. A general doesn't win by fighting every battle. He wins by choosing which battles to fight. An artist doesn't paint every canvas. They create a masterpiece that moves the world. And the ambitious person doesn't succeed by doing more than everyone else. They succeed by doing what no one else is even thinking about. That's what Machiavelli was getting at. Power doesn't belong to the exhausted. It belongs to the aware, to those who choose their energy with precision and spend it like gold. So if you've been working yourself into the ground, ask yourself this: is your exhaustion building a throne or just a cage? Are you closer to your dream or just more tired, more distracted, more distant from it? Because if the answer is the latter, then it's time to stop. Time to reframe laziness, not as weakness, but as a strategic filter, a way of protecting your focus, your ambition, your life force. In the end, the most powerful people don't look busy, they look calm. And that calm isn't laziness, it's the result of knowing exactly what to do and having the courage to do nothing else. That's not just a Machiavellian tactic, that's how you become unshakable. That's how you stop serving ambition and start embodying it.